Thank you. Mr. Coffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to say that what we have is a politically driven failed policy, and it's really by some, maybe by both administrations, but certainly in 2000, I think the decision was in. When was the decision not to put any more prisoners in Guantanamo Bay? When was that decision made?
It was 2006 or 7, last administration. My colleague may know.
The last detainee went in 2008, but certainly if you track how the detainees went in, there was a waning before that, making it clear that there was an intent to not put anyone there if you could avoid it.
Right. Well, I think perhaps when candidate Barack Obama was running for the presidency, he distinguished himself from his rivals by certainly using this as an issue, and I think not only did he convince the majority of the American electorate that it was an issue, but I think he convinced the international community at the same time that it was an issue. But I think the greatest failure of the policy is that it doesn't admit that we are a nation at war, that I think it's part of this administration's fiction that we no longer have the global war on terror. We have overseas contingency operations, and we no longer have terrorist attacks. We have man-caused disasters, and so since we are removing certainly the vocabulary from the lexicon of war, we therefore need to close Guantanamo Bay. We still need it because there are still individuals that want to kill American civilians, and I really think that we ought to consider the lives of Americans as more important than the rights of terrorists, and that ties into military commissions versus bringing them to U.S. soil and trying them there. And so that's just my view of the policy. Let me ask a question, and Mrs. Stone or Mr. Mornston, what impacts have recidivism had on U.S. troops in Afghanistan and elsewhere? In a news article earlier this week highlighted 2 former Gitmo detainees who were among Americans' most wanted, Mullah Abdul, if I'm saying this right, Qayyum Zakir, and Maulvi Abdul Rauf Kadim. Why were these detainees released from Gitmo?
Sir, there have been instances where detainees who have been transferred from Gitmo have re-engaged and have been in the fight and have impacted the lives of U.S. service members. We do track that. I can't discuss that much further in this open session, but we do in fact know that has happened.
Okay. When we, let's see, Ms. Stone?
Again, I would echo my colleague. We track that information, but we would have to discuss further in a closed session.
Anyway, when we resettle these terrorists, because we no longer think that they're a problem yet, we've had a recidivism rate of 14% that we know of, and obviously the rate is much higher than that. Probably, and I think there's an admission that it's higher than that. What cost do U.S. taxpayers bear? In the resettlement?
There are some cases in which the U.S. government has offered to defray some of the receiving country's costs. While those figures have been reported to Congress, but in this, I can't in this session give the exact number, but I will say that the highest per detainee was under $100,000, and this was used to defray housing costs, language training, costs associated with a successful and secure resettlement. But those figures are available, and they can be provided to this committee.
For the record, I would like them provided to this committee.